Well, welcome everyone to the 15th annual Transforming the Teaching and Learning Environment virtual conference. I am Bob Hales, believe it or not, and I'm going to be your moderator for every session. Oh boy. This year, I want to recognize the Wall Street Journal. They're our primary sponsor, and I have to say I was surprised by the plethora of resources they have for higher education. And what we're doing is this week, we've got some sessions with them separate from all the other sessions at noon Central Time, 1 Eastern, 11 Mountain, and 10 Pacific. You'll see on the schedule, they have some sessions today and Friday. There's a question and answer session about what the resources are and how you can use them. And then they have some workshops Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. And I sure would appreciate it if you would just drop by at least and make them feel good. So our next session is awareness of assistive technology and the course design process creates a more egalitarian system. Yes. And as someone who happens to be hearing impaired, yeah, I appreciate attention to any kind of assistive technology to help me do what I need to do. We have with us Humberto Hernandez. He's a Columbia American accessibility activist and accessive technology instructor. He's a certified front-end web developer and a future doctor in educational leadership. How much further do you have to go?
I have 1.5 years left to go. So.
Oh, you're almost done, right?
Almost there.
So at any rate, I'm looking forward to this. So Humberto, let me turn this over to you.
Thank you, Bob. Good morning, afternoon, or evening, depending, of course, where you are located. Certainly a special thanks to the Teaching and Learning Environment Working Group for putting this conference together. And of course, to Bob for inviting me to speak to this specific topic and research that just continues evolving. So thank you. Thank you, everyone, for taking time to attend this presentation. So yeah, just as Bob mentioned, I'm just going to quickly introduce myself. Yes, my name is Humberto Hernandez. I'm a Columbia American accessibility activist, assistive technology instructor. I present a lot for individuals who are blind or visually impaired. So I always tend to say that I'm a mid-aged man with dark hair. I'm wearing some glasses, a blue shirt, and also a blue tie. I have worked for organizations in the private public sector, designing courses and breaking down barriers for individuals with all types of abilities for the last 12 years at this point. As Bob mentioned, yes, I'm a certified front-end web developer, certified higher ed peer reviewer, certified also universal design advocate. And I've really dedicated a significant part of my professional life testing, assessing, and remediating websites, educational courses, and other authoring tools to make them accessible for individuals with disabilities, especially those who are blind and visually impaired. I currently work as a director for instructional design and online learning for a university here in the state of New York, and also volunteer as an accessibility consultant and trainer for different organizations here in Western New York too. Just a little bit about me. So this empirical research that I'm about to present to you is about topics that I have published before and I am very passionate about. These really revolve around assistive technology, course design, higher education, and students with disabilities. And more specifically in this case, how does the awareness of assistive technology in the course design creates a more egalitarian system in human development? So just to get us excited, or started, sorry, please respond to the chat. Where are you joining us today from? What is your role in higher education or K-12, or what is your role, right? Administrator, faculty member, instructional designer? What institution or organization are you representing today? I really love always networking with our IDs, faculty members, administrators, and other accessibility advocates around the country. So this really shares us and allows us to share our experiences and really consult on current challenges. So I read you. I will be having here my chat open so that I can also reach you. So I see Kate, academic technology instructional technology and instructional design for the Western Political Institute in Central Mass. Awesome. Nice to meet you, Kate. Awesome. Thank you. Earlier in the chat, we had Jody from the University of Wisconsin, Whitewater. We had Kristen. Was Lucy from Pima Community College in Tucson as an instructional technologist. As a great role and very key role for, I want to say, every single institution. So nice to meet you, Lucy. Also, we have Manon joining from St. Louis, Missouri University, from University of Missouri, instructional designer. Nice to meet you, Curtis. And we also have Kristen, instructional technology and design from Worcester, Mass. Awesome. Wow. Thank you. Thank you for joining, and nice to meet you for sure. So I'll keep taking a look at the chat as we go along, but as I move here to the next slide, I do want to share 3 objectives of this presentation. So some of those objectives are really summarize how assistive technology is used to create a more egalitarian system in human development. The second objective is to criticize, right, why students with disabilities experience lower levels of class engagement. We'll be diving into a couple empirical research and articles and just theories that have proven, unfortunately, that this is one of those cases. And also, evaluate, right, how the awareness of assistive technology affordances allow faculty to really assess and remediate course content. In the chat, we also had Jody letting us know that she's a lecturer in communication and started as doing a lot of ID work. So nice to meet you. Nice to meet you, Jody. It's awesome. Thanks for sharing. A fellow doctorate student, so I know the I know the struggle. I know how hard it could be. So, all right, continue here. So I like starting this presentation always talking about Haven Germa, who I had the pleasure to meet in one of our accessibility conferences last year. So I don't know if some of you have met her or have heard about her. So Haven was born deafblind, just like her older brother. When Haven, or in this case, when her grandma took her brother to school in East Africa, they told her deafblind children can't go to school, that there was simply no chance for them to be part of educational experiences. Haven's family then decided to move to the United States, where Haven, by then, was born deafblind. When the time for Haven to join school, or when it was time for Haven to join school, her family was really amazed by the opportunities afforded by the Americans with Disabilities Act. And 30 years later, Haven became the first deafblind individual to ever graduate from Harvard Law School, thanks to the supporting mechanisms built around the Americans with Disabilities Act that really guaranteed that awareness of assistive technology in the course design process by the Harvard instructional design team helped her succeed. So Haven uses a piece of technology called Braille Note, or Braille display. Some of you might have known it also by that name. And of course, deafblind individuals utilize it in their daily lives to have access to the world that we, hearing and sighted people have access to. Without this piece of assistive technology, Hayden would not be able to read, communicate, and experience life as she would if she had assistive technology device, any assistive technology device available. So therefore, she's really a success case that shows that when university professors are aware of assistive technologies and programs and curriculums are creating more accessible, usable, perceivable, operable, understandable, and robust, students with disabilities can actually succeed at the college level. So I want to mention that this is our brief agenda for today. I'll start, of course, with an introduction to assistive technology, and then move into the literature review, where I'll talk about a couple of different themes. Then I'll talk about the methodology. I'll show some data facts as part of the research findings. I'll certainly discuss those, and after that, I'll talk about the limitations of the research. And finally, I'll just proceed to provide some recommendations and references. I'd like to mention here, I've provided this, or have presented this internationally. So I would like to mention that this presentation is based, or it's about research that actually was conducted in the US. And therefore, I refer a lot about US-based regulations and practices. And this hopefully allows us to, if anyone here in the audience is from another country or has experience working in another country, and some of these themes evoke any of those sentiments that come from other countries, please feel free to share them with us. This really will allow us to contrast, argue, and really value other regulations that exist in other countries like Canada, South America, Latin America, and Europe, different places where we have had really rich conversations about all of this. So I'll be taking a look at the chat. Okay, so all right. So here comes, what I call like our first 1 minute paper activity of the session, and these are really aimed to engage with you and get your thoughts about what you already know, what you want to know about the topics related with assistive technology and their interconnections or intersections with course design remediation. And please feel free to use the chat to respond to these prompts. Please know that I certainly will be reading you. So here we have, so yeah, that was a good question. The prompt is, what do you know about assistive technology and is used in course design process, or what do you want to know? And please notice that I read you, and we can all dive into all of this. Let's see. First, let's see, Michelle or Jody or Kristen, Curtis or Manon, Lucy may have anything that sparks some ideas. Jody says, what are the laws that we need to incorporate into our courses? Oh, we're certainly going to dive into that, Jody. Actually, many people talk about ADA, but right, there's many other laws that actually support instructional design and course design processes. So we're certainly going to dive into those. Thank you for that. Thank you for that contribution. See if anyone else have anything else before we continue with the conversation or your presentation. Yeah. All right. So I'll take a look at the chat, but as we continue taking a look at the chat, I will continue here. Oops. There you go. So I lost my presentation. There. All right. So I'd really like to start from the very beginning, right? Like, what is assistive technology? And assistive technology is any item, of course, piece of equipment that is used to increase, maintain, or improve the functional capabilities of an individual with a disability. In fact, Gancho and his colleagues group assistive technology into 3 categories: low-tech, mid-tech, and high-tech. Low-tech devices are non-electronic devices that require little or no training. For example, walking canes, magnifying glasses, high contrast notebooks or rulers, and some others. Mid-tech devices are those that are electronic and require minimal training and basic maintenance. For example, digital recorders, adapted or high contrast keyboards, and some other pieces of equipment over there. And for instance, an example of this is like if you have ever used, the auto correction or auto refill feature on your phone, you have used a mid-tech assistive technology tool, perhaps without even knowing. And high-tech devices include robust microelectronics that require training and ongoing maintenance. For example, screen readers, speech-to-text software, smart braille keyboards, braille note takers, etc. So this wide range of assistive technology tools provide individuals with disabilities equal access to educational opportunities that non-disabled students have. And in fact, Kani argues that assistive technology is the difference between experiencing success or failure in educational settings for students with disabilities, and even that it could increase students' participation in educational activities. So there is empirical research supporting these variables or arguments. And here I wanted to share, of course, this is a list of the most commonly used assistive technology tools at our institution. So, for example, we have, of course, JAWS, or Job Access with Speech. We also have NVDA, or also known as Non-Visual Desktop Access. We also have Fusion and Zoom Text. And, there are screen readers and script magnifiers out there that are utilized by our faculty members and instructional design teams to ensure that the content uploaded into the learning management system, as well as the external tools that we integrate with it, are accessible and usable for all students, faculty, and administrators. And we ensure that, of course, the testing and assessment of those apps and new tools that are added to the LMS go through our accessibility SOP, or accessibility standardized operating procedure. So I wanted to share that just because we have make sure that we have created processes into our instructional design process that include accessibility, right? Being very mindful of accessibility overall. I want to revisit very quick here the chat. But as I do that, I do want to prompt just with another question. Here's another 1 minute paper activity that says like, that it really asks, what do you it says, what do you know about these high-tech assistive technology tools, right? And how to use them, right? In course design reviews, or what do you want to know? So please don't, as I said, I'll read you. So I have my chat. I see Lucy saying, I would like to know more about what assistive technology is out there and how instructional technologies can support it. It's, what's really that I want to dive into this, Lucy. And I do want to go back to the point I was mentioning earlier, right? We cannot just mention, that assistive technology exists out there, but we have to think about the process of utilizing it, right? And how we incorporate the awareness of assistive technology in working with our faculty members, right? So if we say to our faculty members, we have to create a PDF file that is accessible, it's a matter of also explaining them how to, right? And then we say, oh, well, if here is the NVDA happens to be an assistive technology tool that we utilize, or students with low vision, people that have, or who are blind or visually impaired, or people who have ADHD, you can mention all of the different ways that you can utilize NVDA, for example, for. And then you can say, and this is how they navigate these concepts. That's why it's important, they navigate these documents. And that's why it's important that we create headings, right? That we create bullets, bulleted items, order items, all these different things. So this way is certainly the result of using it, but it's more about the process of getting faculty to, and faculty administrators and staff to get to know how to utilize these technologies. Manon says, what are some best practices to make sure that the design of course of a course meets the needs of the majority of assistive technology. How users who rely on assistive experience a course. That is a very important point, and we're certainly going to dive into what are those best practices later in this presentation. You'll notice that there is a lot of that has to do with affordances. If we do want to talk about, how the majority, how a course meets the needs of the majority of those who need assistive technology, we do need to talk about affordances in assistive technology, right? Because that goes all the way down to the code level. Affordances are websites or anything, right? That in the web. So I'm going to dive into that later in the presentation, but that's a great question, Manon. So thank you for posting that one. And we'll certainly talk about best practices also. All right, so I'll continue here. Let me continue here. Oh, I got my keyword there. Okay. So as I said, this empirical research really includes three main themes. The first one was, higher education, jurisdictional framework around students with disabilities. And why was that important? Because we needed to know what are those laws that protect students with disabilities in educational settings. The second thing was effective accommodations for students with disabilities, because we needed to know what is that those laws guarantee for students with disabilities. And the third theme was universal design for learning and its implications in assistive technology, because it is important that we know what is really beyond effective accommodations. So I wanted just to give these themes, because we're going to start diving into them more in detail. So yeah, we'll start with the first one, which is the jurisdictional framework around students with disabilities in the US. And the first highlight that we need to mention is that is basically what the US Department of Justice has made very clear, and is that people with disabilities have the same rights as any other individual without a disability. And there are really two laws to ensure equal access to opportunities for individuals with disabilities in the US. One is the Americans with Disabilities Act, and two is the Section 504 of the Vocational Rehabilitation Act of 1973. 504, right? And their implications in course design and students, student success, accessibility, right? Overall, what do you know about them? A lot of people, I think something that I always have heard from faculty is like, why is it important for us to do that, right? We only have 2 students, that need this. And something interesting about it is that, one thing is, is to do it because it's the law. And the other thing is because the faculty member feels it's right to do it. So what is important sometimes to grind those conversations on is like, these are the regulations. These are the rights these individuals have. And not because you're thinking of just these 2 students, how it's going to benefit the 2 students. It doesn't really mean that it's not going to benefit those others who, may, whose educational experience may be enriched by having those affordances or those accessibility pieces already built into their courses. So I thought I'll mention that just because, it always evokes thoughts to people as I ask that question here, right? What do we know about ADA, Section and their implications in course design and the student success? We'll see if there is anything that anyone has. Manon or Lucy or Jody or Kristen, Curtis. So Valerie tells us, I know we need to meet Section 504 compliance, but I would like more information on how. That's exactly what we're going to dive into here. And to what degree for all courses in the absence of specific accessibility accommodations. I guess what are some basic things every course needs to have to be compliant? Okay, that's huge. And we're certainly going to dive into that here, Valerie. So thank you for mentioning that. There is this other presentation that it was almost a workshop that we conducted actually in collaboration with other universities here in Western New York that basically talked about those applications, right? Because this presentation was more theoretical. more based on the empirical research that really evoked some of those applications. But if I don't dive into that very in detail in this presentation, Valerie, I will send you the recording to the presentation that we did, where we talk specifically about heading levels, affordances, color contrast. We talk about alt text. We talked about how to meet specific course design standards. For example, standard 8 for quality matters. So I'm gonna dive into. I'm gonna provide you with that recording. And Bob, if you'd remind me, I think that will help me. But anyway, I'm gonna try to move a little faster here. And just to provide just general information about the research, because this is going to be very empirical research. This is the first piece of literature that I push out to just introduce people to this idea, and the applications and other things that we built into are more dense and part of all the presentations. But I'm going to try just to go a little faster into this. Bob, could you remind me how many minutes do I have here? Just so I want to make sure that to see if I do accelerate myself, like pace myself. So I just want to make sure. Do I have until what time? Oh, I don't think I hear Bob. But I'll try to go fast for everyone here. So, all right, I'm just gonna contrast things a couple things here. In association just with the jurisdictional regulations, there are a couple of things. We have, of course, ADA, which as of July of 2022, or July 26th of 2022 marked the 32nd anniversary of the enactment of the Americans with Disabilities Act. And really, this landmark civil rights law really protects access and opportunity for people with accessibilities across community life, including, of course, education. And this law is also used to certainly eliminate, discrimination and demand inclusion for disabled students in academic activities. Section 504, of course, works together with ADA to protect, adult learners, or in this case, also children with disabilities from exclusion and unequal treatment in schools. But that's not the only two pieces of legislation that we have to keep in mind. We also have to keep in mind these other three, which are the ones that provide the actual rubrics or the actual guidance, that Valerie was talking about. Like, how do we get to that degree in which courses are going to be accessible? What are those accommodations that we need? How do we make them compliant? Those rubrics exist as part of Section 508. And we dive into that into other research and other presentations. So I will provide those as part of attachments for this presentation. But I want to make you aware of this. There is Section 508, which is basically the Section 508 of the Vocational Rehabilitation Act of 1973, which is basically a law created to eliminate barriers in information technology for people with disabilities. And the U.S. Access Board, which is the entity that enforces this law, reorganized the Section 508 standards to harmonize them with the World Wide Web Consortium, or also called like the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines, or also known as WCAG 2.1, almost 2.2 at this point. So the adoption of those web accessibility standards is really perhaps, one of the biggest advances made towards digital inclusion for people with disabilities in the US, because it makes Section 508, as of right now, the only US legislation that uses globally recognized voluntary consensus standards for web content and information and communication technology, basically in the US. And that's for Section 508, right? It provides some standards. But we also have the Telecommunications Act that is enforced by the Federal Communications Commission that requires that all educational telecourses have to contain closed caption for individuals who are hearing impaired. And we also have, of course, the Assistive Technology Act that provides federal grant funding to generate awareness about assistive technologies via demonstrations, technical assistance, trainings, and advocacy events. So, for example, here in the US, each state is mandated to provide support to consumers, their families, and interested professionals to increase access to and awareness of assistive technology devices and services. And therefore, there are federally funded assistive technology trainings available for faculty, administrators, and staff via local centers of assistive technology that really universities can take advantage of. That's something that, for example, we do here in our university. We make sure that we reach out to these assistive technology training sites, and we mention, the Assistive Technology Act, and these are federally funded. They get a budget yearly, to make these trainings, to make people, to increase access to and awareness of assistive technology for any institution that reached out to them. So if you haven't done that, I really encourage you to look at what are those local centers of assistive technology and mention this, because this is still active, and they get funded. They get funds for these assistive technology trainings. Okay, I'm going to dive, as I say, a little faster into all this. So now that we have certainly reviewed the legislative side of things, we can move into the second theme, which is the effective accommodations for students with disabilities. And of course, unlike high schools, students with disabilities need to register with the university's Office of Accessibility Resources and disclose that they have a disability so they can request effective accommodations. Now, what is important to mention that is that for an accommodation to be effective, 3 criterion need to be met, according to the U.S. Department of Education. 1 is timeliness of delivery. 2 is accuracy of the translation, and 3 is provision in a manner and medium appropriate to the significance of the message and the abilities of the individual with disability. I always like to give this a scenario because it really explains the importance of providing effective accommodations to students with disabilities. So let's imagine a student is navigating D2L or Canvas or Blackboard, and this student is using JAWS, Job Access with Speech. The student opens the PDF, let's say the student opens a PDF and notices that that PDF file is not accessible via screen reader. The student heads over the accessibility office and requests the PDF file to be made accessible via screen reader. Then the accessibility office representative says, okay, I can have it done for you, but it may take 2 weeks. Then the question for all of you is that an effective accommodation? To help you all here, no. To help you all here, no. Like, definitely that's correct, Jody. No, it is not an effective accommodation because it is not timely on delivery. That delay, that of 2-week delay, will cause the student not to be able to experience, participate, and access the educational activity that their non-disabled classmate have access to right away. So therefore, it's not automatically is not a time, it's not accessible, or it's not effective. And the same applies for accuracy of the translation. Let's imagine the accessibility office says, okay, I can have it done for you today, but it will not include these headings, these graphs, explanations, and these titles. Well, then that accommodation is not effective because the accuracy of translation has been compromised. And a similar case could happen with provision appropriate to the abilities of the individual with a disability. Let's imagine, one more time, the accessibility office tells the student, okay, well, I can have it done today. It will include the same content. However, I will give it to you in Braille, not digitally. Well, perhaps that doesn't fit the student's abilities either. Therefore, the educational experience of the student is being impacted by the lack of effective accommodation. So this really may explain the reason why lawsuits have quadrupled against higher education institutions in the US in the last decade, even more in the last 5 years, if you all have followed up, the news closely. And all of this is all of these lawsuits are actually recorded in the National Council of Disability website. So if you haven't taken a look at that, please do, because you will see that the trend is going up. And all of this really has a name, and I really like to ground these things in different models and theories. All of this has a name, and the name of it is medical model of disability. So, so what do you know? What do you know about the medical model of disability and how it relates to course design practices? Let's see if any of you may know that. Oh, I see here Manan saying, but the reality of what many students experience, though, unfortunately, it's unfortunate. You're so right, man. Unfortunately, that's the reality of what many students experience. That's absolutely true. So yeah, what do you guys know about the medical model of disability, and how does it really relate to course design practices? Let's see. I don't know much. I would love to learn more. All right, so let's dive into that right away, Lucy. So let me explain that. Actually, the medical model of disability is explained by the work of Burgstaller. So there's a couple of books and also a couple of articles out there, peer-reviewed articles, I must say. And really, her work says that professionals identify a individual's functional limitation and prescribe adjustments that allow this person to fit into an established environment. And really, through this process, the accommodation model does not always provide an equitable experience for students with disabilities, and can also lead to unnecessary dependence on a student's accessibility office. So that's why the third theme of this thesis this research was universal design for learning and its implications in assistive technology. So in this theme, starts explaining the social model of disability, which is basically the opposite of the medical model of disability. And what the social model of disability says is that what makes someone disabled is not their medical condition, but the attitudes and structures of society. So, for example, what this social model disability really says is that what makes a student request the PDF in a screen reader accessible form is not that the student is blind, is that the course and the PDF was not designed with accessibility in mind. So we're putting the blame not on the student, but on the system, right? On the assistive technology practices. I do not want to say faculty, but on basically the system, right? Of this lack of awareness of making documents accessible, making websites or courses accessible. So it's blaming not the student, but the actual system due to this lack of awareness. So very quick. So within that area of focus, a fundamental concept really evolved. And this concept is developed by Cheryl Burgstaller and is known as universal designing higher education. And really what universal designing higher education means is basically the design of educational products and environments to be usable by all people to the greatest extent possible without the need for adaptation or specialized design. And basically this is, if you look at it very well, it's just basically the proactive approach to create accessible content within a course so that students don't have to request accommodations. So what this application of this concept does is to reduce the need for individual accommodations and really opens the scopes to solutions that, one, yield universal design that are aware of the requirements of assistive technology, and two, assistive technology that are aware of the affordances of universal design programs. And I think there is where the affordances work comes into play. And let's dive into that. So assistive technology users are heavily dependent on affordances. And some of you may be thinking, okay, one second, what is an affordance in this case? So what do you all know about affordances, their importance of using assistive technology, and how are they important during the course design process? Let's see. Let's see if we hear from anyone else. So if you don't know, it's completely okay. I'm going to dive into this right away just because I want to speed this up a little bit. I'm not familiar with the term. I am not sure how to understand affordances in this context. Okay, no problem. Mark and Nana, no problem. We're going to dive into this very thoroughly. So affordances in this concept, here, let me move to it. So affordances in this concept, I mean, specifically in this context of universal design, is basically a perceived signal or clue that an object may be used to perform an action. And one example is the following. Imagine you are blind, right? You enter a building and you know that someone is waiting for you on the 10th floor. You manage somehow to find the elevator. You enter the elevator and notice that the buttons are not braille. So you don't know what button to press to get to the 10th floor. I mean, you can always press all the buttons until eventually you get to the correct floor, and hopefully there is a speaker that tells you 10th floor. However, that's not efficient, and most likely it's going to be a very unpleasant experience for you to have to press every single button, to finally get to the 10th floor. So the problem in this case is that button that performs an action is not braille. So the person with a disability has no clue what it's going to do. And at the end, you will be, of course, confused, disoriented and frustrated, and certainly the very same example that I just gave happens in digital contexts. When courses do not have the correct affordances built, meaning there are no, at the code level, there is no headings, there is no alt text, there is no inputs that says buttons, when their links are not descriptive, when there's so many other, implications around that are actually in those digital experiences, those will be the cues, those will be the affordances. So of course, because of this, students with disabilities will not be able, of course, to navigate the content. Their educational experiences will certainly be negatively impacted, and they will not have the same access to educational opportunities that non-disabled students have. And what this is really doing is hindering their ability to succeed at the college level. But once faculty members know how affordances work, how they can test, assess, and remediate course content for students with disabilities, then the universal designing higher education approach, really they will support, along with this social model disability, they will support the idea that the design of educational products and environments can be usable by all people to the greatest extent possible without the need of adaptation or specialized design. Now, I do want to mention very quick that this doesn't mean that accommodations should not exist. Effective accommodations, and I say it again, effective accommodations should be readily available when needed. However, they should not consume the accessibility department and faculty efforts mostly. It should be more focus should be given into the accessibility portion of courses instead of the accommodations portion. And this finally takes us to the point that instructors need to be aware of common assistive technologies and how they can better integrate them in the course design process. Now, let me talk very quickly about their methodology and of the research, and I'm going to flag time for questions just to dive into these concepts that perhaps I am not totally adding as part of this presentation, because this is more the empirical research performed. But I just want to leave it up for questions in 1 second. So the methodology of this research, we collected a survey that addressed specific learning processes current students with and without disabilities experience at the college level. And this survey was collected by the NESI survey, which is the National Survey of Student Engagement, which is basically the mechanism that we use to measure the level of student participation at universities and colleges in Canada and the United States, of course, as it relates to learning and engagement. And the survey was collected at a liberal arts college located in the northeast of the United States. And I performed a quantitative analysis. And I'm going to go kind of fast here because Bob told me that I have 4 more minutes, so I'm just going to go very quick over here. So some of the research findings, could be summarized by saying that really students with disabilities responses showed significantly lower scores for questions that reflected high level of engagements, collaborations, and interactions. So So what we need to say is that, if we think about critically about what that research finding showed, is that, the results of this research, can certainly be articulated to show evidence of less social constructivist theory and really correlated to relationships of universal design central ideas. And I will move faster here. So, and basically this means that students with disabilities certainly participated less. The students with disabilities certainly engaged less in the learning process. And all of this really happened because why? Because the lack of awareness of assistive technology, right? There is nothing in the research showed that students were using assistive technology or that could use assistive technology to enhance or participate at the same level than non-disabled students. So, and many other data, really showed that, for example, the crux really finding of this research is that really barriers for inclusion for students with disabilities really exist or still exist in education, and that it's time to do something about it, right? And as part of like something to do about it, the research, some of the research that I found is that, we need to connect, we could find that some of these students who were, in this case, disabled in the classroom, really showed lower rates of engagement, lower rates of participation. And basically that was contradicting, in this case, the universal design way of teaching or designing courses. So I'll go faster about this, just for time's sake. But basically, yeah, there was really a profound relationship between assistive technology and class engagement for students with disabilities, supported by the literature, by scholarships, by the scholars. And in reality, there was really no application. The scholarship is saying, or researchers are saying, we need to add assistive technology into the course design process, but no one is really doing it. And most likely, no one is really doing it because most likely they didn't know how to. So the discussion here is, assistive technology creates a more egalitarian system human development, but faculty members really don't know how to, right? And really, there is no assistive technology data in national assessment surveys, and therefore that could be a limitation of why people is not paying attention to that. So, of course, my research has some limitations because I only canvassed one single institution, and of course, and more focus could have been given to the integration of assistive technology into learning goals to see if actually students were or not being impacted with their learning, even if they were not participating in the classroom. And some of the recommendations I gave is that certainly there is more need for more research in this field, and also I asked that people, faculty members in higher education consider, learning about assistive technology, its affordances, how it works, and really add assistive technology-based questions to national assessments, and also that we think broadly about this, right? That we think about individuals with disabilities being also added to these diversity and inclusivity efforts. And perhaps just to finalize, I do want to leave this quote by Kevin Gurma, and he says, "I was inspired to go to law school, and in 2010, I entered Harvard Law School. Harvard told me we never had a deaf-blind student before, and I told Harvard I've never been to Harvard Law School before. We didn't have all the answers, but we pioneered our way using assistive technology and high expectations." And he says, "It is okay not to have the answer as long as you try. Try one solution. And if that doesn't work, try another solution." And we kept doing that. And in 2013, I graduated. And I do hope that, and that's what I hope. That's what I hope in this case, that that this presentation had inspired you to learn a little bit more about assistive technology and the students with disabilities. I hope that you spread awareness of assistive technology from your respective roles in society. And finally, that I hope that you find ways to incorporate assistive technology and also individuals with disabilities empowerment efforts from your different capacities. And just remember what Hayden said, it is okay not to have the answer as long as you try. Try one solution. Thank you.
And we've got a minute or two if anybody has additional questions. I have the feeling no.
Thank
Uh,
you.
Yes, Humberto, thank you. I every year try to get some things about some kind of assistive technology or building in to courses, practices to assist people. And hopefully someday we'll be at the point we don't have to worry about it. So, but
I
until
hope so too.
we'll have people like you on here. So thank
Thanks.
you
I
for
thought
doing this. And
absolutely.
folks, we have another session coming up at the top of the hour and hope to see you there.